Hi everybody, welcome back to the Mandy's Makings YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. This week I am going to show you how to connect your squares. So last week we learned how to make a legacy square or a granny square, and this is the one that we learned on. And so since then I have created a second square, and then I have two more of these gray tweed squares that we're going to use so that I can show you how to connect squares. So this is going to be the technique that you would use in order to connect squares into a legacy blanket, which is what we give away to the kids that we work with or connect with that are at risk for being trafficked. Our legacy blankets go to those kids, and so this is going to be the technique that we use to be able to connect all the squares that we get in. I know I've mentioned in previous videos, but we receive squares like this from women all over the US and Canada, and so when the squares come in, we connect all the squares into a blanket, and then we give them away to kids in need. So let's get started today, and I will show you how to connect these squares. So first we're going to start off by lining out our squares where we want them. Now I know that these are not all in the frame, but you can kind of get an idea here. So I've laid out my squares this way. You can kind of play around. You're going to have more than one squares. What's great about this technique is you can connect many squares, or you can connect a small amount. You can make a baby blanket, or you can make an adult blanket using this method. So it just depends on the number of squares you have and how big your blanket is. But when you go to create your blanket, one of the first things you want to do is lay out your squares and see what you want your blanket to look like. So for me, I'm thinking that I'm going to switch these two squares, and this is going to be the way that I want to connect my squares for this mini version of a legacy blanket. And so today, this is what we're going to make. We're going to put together and connect. So to start off, what I'll do is I fold. Now this is what the square, this is the front. Technically, this will be the front of your blanket. And so when you go to connect your squares, the best way is these are the spaces that you're going to connect. You're going to start from one end and you're going to run all the way across to the other end. So when you're doing a blanket, you may have, like for me right now, I have 2, but I've had 10 across, and you'll just continue with this method that I'm showing you until you get to the very end. And then the way that I like to do it is to connect all the ones that are running on each end. So you're running this way, you're running this way, you're running this way. And then once you get all of those connected, then you will turn it like this, and then you will connect all the ones this way. So in the end, you'd have all of them connected together, and then you can weave in the ends like we learned last week on your blanket. Now, yes, there are going to be a lot of ends to weave in, but trust me, it's worth it at the end. So to get started on this, connecting these squares, what you'll do is you'll notice that these squares I've lined up so that the clusters that we learned, like we talked about last week, so these, I'm going to move these out of the frame for a second. So you'll notice that these clusters are lined up. So here, these clusters go together, these clusters, and so forth onto this square. So when I go to connect these squares, I'm going to line those clusters up so that they're easy for me to connect. And so when you're looking at how to connect a granny square, if you have Googled this or you have already looked at this, you will know that there are a ton of different ways to connect squares. I am going to show you today the way that seems to be the easiest for me. Not to say that it's the right or wrong way. This is just what works for me. And so I'm going to share that with you. But there are a ton of other options on YouTube that you can look at, and I highly recommend that you watch those videos, because you never know, there may be other methods that you enjoy better than this one. So I am going to show you how to connect these squares using this, it's essentially a single crochet technique. So I'm going to use my pink yarn that I used for these same squares to connect it with, and we're going to do just like we did in the first video. So we're going to create a slip knot. So we've got our just like we did this one. We formed the circle. And then we're going to bring the piece of yarn into the circle, and we're going to pull it like we did last time. Remember, we laid out our square circle. We're going to insert our hook into that circle, and we're going to pull this yarn that's coming from the yarn skein or the yarn roll until it's tight on our hook, just like we did the last time when we were making our squares. And when you're starting to connect the squares, you're going to lay them together just like we mentioned, and you are going to connect. So I want to show you here. So when you're connecting, you'll notice that this is a corner and this is a corner. So we are going to join starting in each of these corners. So you're going to pick up this corner just like this, and then you're going to go in and you're going to pick up this corner just like this, and this is where we're going to start to connect our square. So you're going to take you're going to use this just like you would as if you were going to create, remember when we did the yarn over and we pulled through the loops? Remember when we did a slip stitch? That's kind of going to be the method that we're going to use here, except we're going to do a single crochet. So we're going to yarn over the hook, and we're going to pull it through just like this. And now we have 2 loops on our hook. And we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through those 2 loops right there. And so you have now connected these 2 squares at that corner. Do you see that? Those 2 corners are now connected. And so now that your squares are kind of laying like this, you'll see where the stitches will start to line up. And so you will insert your hook into this first space right here in the gray one. And then you'll insert your hook into this first space of the pink one. You'll yarn over your hook, just like you did before, and pull it through all of those loops. So you have 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over again, and you're going to pull it through both of those loops. So you've connected your first stitch. So now we have our corner connected and our first stitch connected. And so we're going to keep going down the line to do that. So you're going to put your hook into this second stitch, top of that stitch. You'll see right here. Now see where, when I say that you put it into the stitch, see how it picks up those 2 loops that are at the top? If you notice on the top of the stitches, if we're looking at them right here, when you look at the top of a stitch, let's look at the gray one because we've got that on there. You'll see that these are V's. They're V's at the top of there. Those, when you go to pick them up, have 2 loops. So you'll get 2 loops on the top of your hook. So that's what you're wanting to pick up, are these 2 loops that are right here, which is that top stitch. So you're picking up those 2 loops on the gray, and then you're going to pick up the corresponding one on the pink, which is that next set of, or that next stitch. So you're going to show that you have 2 stitches. So you see how you have the gray right here, and then you've picked up the pink. This right here is the loop that was on your hook. So now you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull your stitch through the pink, and then you're going to keep going and pull your stitch through the gray. And now you've got your 2 loops on your hook. And you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through both of those. Now you've connected your second stitch. You've connected the corner and the 2 first stitches. And we're going to keep going like that. So you're going to put your hook into the gray, the top of the next gray stitch. You're going to put your hook into the top of the next pink stitch, just like that. Here we are. And you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull that through the pink, and you're going to pull it through the gray, just like that. And now you've got 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through those 2 loops. So now if you look at it, you'll notice you have your first corner connected and your first clusters connected. The next space that we're looking at is the space that's in between the 2 clusters. So what you're going to do here is you're literally going to just stick your needle or your hook into the 2 spaces, into the gray and the pink, and you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull that loop through that space. And now you've got your 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through 2. And now you've connected your first space in between your 2 clusters. Do you see that? Right there. So now we're going to move on to our next cluster. So we're going to go into the first stitch, into the gray, and then we're going to go into the pink, just like that. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull it through both of those. We have 2 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through both of those loops. So we've connected that. And we're just going to keep going like this until we get to the very end. So we're going to insert our hook into the top of the gray. We're going to insert our hook into the top of the pink. We're going to pull our yarn through there. So we have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through both of those loops. And so now you are at the end, or at the middle of your next cluster. Now you'll notice where for this past cluster that we just did, we only connected 2, and that's because we connected it. If you look closely, you'll see we connected them in between the 2 clusters, right? So there was a top piece here in this first cluster, and then there's a top piece here in the second cluster. And then the next space is in between the 2 clusters. So we're going to take our needle, or our hook, and we're going to go in between those 2 like that. We're going to pull up, yarn over, and we're going to pull this up here. So we have 2 loops on our hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. And you're going to continue doing that until the very end. So we're going to go through the next gray and the next pink. And we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull the loop through both. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull it through those 2 loops on the hook. We're going to do that again. Yarn over, pull through both of those, all of those loops. Yarn over and pull through 2. Now we're at our space again in between our clusters. So we're going to put our hook into those 2, that space in the gray and the pink. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're going to just keep going. So we're putting our hook into both the gray and the pink. We're pulling up a loop, and we are yarning over and pulling through 2. So we're going to go through the top of the space again, just like this. So it'll look like this when you go through both. You'll go through both the top gray and then the top pink. There's 2 there. There's 2 there. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull your loop through all of those. You've got your 2 on the hook. You yarn over, and you pull through 2. Now you're at your open space. So you put your hook in, and you pull up your loop. Yarn over and pull through 2. Here's our next cluster. So we're going to go into the gray and into the pink again. We're going to pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2. We're going to do that again. We're going to go through the gray, and we're going to go through the pink, just like this. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull those through the loops. And then we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2. Now here we are at our last space before our last cluster. So we're going to go through the space, the gray and the pink. We're going to pull up our loop. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2 again. And we're going to finish out our last cluster. So go through the gray, go through the pink, yarn over and pull up your loop. Yarn over, go through both of those stitches. One more time, go through the gray, go through the pink. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull up your loop. Yarn over, and you're going to pull through both of those loops. And so now you'll notice that you're at the end of your squares. So here we've connected all of our squares at the top, and we've reached the end of the square. So we're at the top of our, see if we can see here. So here's your last corner on this side. So you're going to do just like you did from the very beginning, and you're going to go into the corner of the gray and the pink. You're going to pull your loop up just like that, and then you're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through those 2 loops. So you've got this entire, these 2 squares, the whole side of this is connected now. Okay, so now we are going to connect these 2 squares with the ones that we've just connected. So in order to do that, we've just finished connecting the last 2 corner spaces on these 2 squares. And so we want to connect those with these 2 corners on the 2 new squares that we're going to pick up. So what we're going to do is, let me get some of this yarn out of this. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to pick up those 2 squares, or those 2 corners of these 2 squares, to connect them with the ones that we just finished. So in order to do that, you're going to stick your hook into the corner space of the pink square. Do you see how I just did that? I just picked up this square space right here. This is the corner we're working into. So we're literally just going to put our hook into that square space. And then we're also going to take our square space of the gray and we're going to stick our hook into it. Now what's happened is I've kind of pulled these up a little bit so they meet each other, right? So that both of the back sides, if you picked them up like this, are facing each other. And so these are the fronts of the squares and these are the backs of the squares. So, excuse me. So you're going to be connecting the squares on the right sides. Technically, they're both similar because of the way that we made the squares. But we want them all to match and to go evenly down this way with the second squares, just like we did with the first. So we've gotten our hook into both of these corner spaces. And what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over our hook, just like we did before. We're going to pull it through both of those corners of those squares. And then we're going to pull it through the hook or the loop that was, I'm sorry, before you do that, we're going to make another stitch. So you've pulled it through your 2 corner spaces. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through both of the loops, just like you did the last one. So there you have connected these 2 corners with this past square that you used, correct? So we're going to keep going and we're going to do the same stitching on this as we did on this. So we're going to pick up these. We're going to kind of move that over because we're done with these now. So we're going to move on to this set of squares that we're trying to connect. So we're going to stick our hook into this first space of the pink cluster that's on this pink square. And then we're going to stick our hook into the gray cluster on this gray square, just like this. Here's the pink cluster. Here's the gray cluster. And we're going to yarn over our hook. We're going to put it through both of those loops. And then we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull it through those 2, just like that. And we're going to keep going. So we're going to put our hook into the pink. We're going to put our hook into the gray. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through those loops. Now we've got 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through those 2 loops. And we're going to keep going down like that until we get to the end. So we're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Now we're at the middle. We're at the space in between the 2 clusters. So we're going to go into the space of the pink and into the space of the gray. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull up our loop. And we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through both of those loops. So we have connected our first cluster on our second set of squares. And we're just going to keep going. So we're going to go into the next pink stitch. We're going to go into the next gray stitch. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through both of those. So there's 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over again. And we're going to pull through those 2 loops to connect it. So one more time, go through the pink and the gray. We're going to yarn over and pull up our loop. We're going to yarn over and pull through 2. Now we finished our second cluster on this second set of squares. We're going to go into the space between our two clusters again of the pink and of the gray, just like we did right here. See, we're going through the gray space as well. You can see the back of it as well. So we're going through both of those. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull up our loop. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through 2. And we're just going to keep going like this into those spaces, pulling up a loop, yarning over and pulling through 2 in each of the clusters and each of the spaces in between the clusters until we get to the very end. So we're going to go through the space in between the clusters and we're going to pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through those 2 loops on our hook. We're going to put our hook into the next space in the pink and the gray. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. And we're going to keep going. And what will happen, what I was saying essentially is you would just continue to do this until you got to the end of the blanket. So like for this, we've only got 4 squares, so we're only going to go through these 2 sets. But you'll do this and continue to do this and picking up multiple sets of squares along the way until you would get to the end of the blanket, however many squares that would be on the blanket that you're making. So we're going to go through, here we are at a middle of a cluster again. So here we are, see how we're at, this is between our cluster. We're going to go into the middle of this cluster here. And then we're going to go into the middle, here we are here. See how the gray middle cluster here? We're going to go into that space there. And we're going to yarn over and pull up our loop through both of them. Yarn over and pull through 2. And here we're going to go through our spaces on these, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, put our hook into those 2 spaces, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to go through our last middle space of our 2 clusters. We're going to pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And then we're going to go through our last cluster to connect those 2. Here we go. And now we're at the last 2. We're at the last corner of our last square here. And since this is going to be just our blanket that we're working with right now, this is essentially the end of this row. And so in order to complete an end, we're going to complete an end just like we did when we were making our square. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these, the corner of the pink and the corner of the gray. We're going to pull up a loop just like that. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through 2. And we're going to end like we did last time. We'll yarn over 1. We're going to pull through our loop and we're going to keep pulling it so that we have a long piece. Like I said last time, I do about 6 to 8 inches, maybe a little, you know, just enough so that you can weave in your end. And so you'll have enough left over to pull tightly and have, so it doesn't come undone. And then you're going to cut that piece off. And you're going to pull this space that's coming from your yarn out of the way. And now you're left with this piece at the end. I'm folding these 2 so that they lay flat together. So it's easier for me to show you. So see how now we're at the end and this is the piece that you have left and you're wanting to just tug on that. I'll lay this down. Tug on that so that it's secure. So you know that's not coming undone. So that is the end of this row that you are connecting. Now, if you were doing a blanket, you would go through and you would connect all of the edges like I mentioned that we're running this way. And now we're going to turn our blanket and we're going to do the same thing going this way to connect these edges. So here we go. So we're going to start here. Now, if you'll look what I just did. So this was laying out this way, right? We've connected these, so these are done. These need to be connected down. And since the best way for us to know the squares, we lay them together, I always pull these 2 up like this, and I'll lay them down flat. So that way I know that I'm stitching this edge. This is my next edge that needs to be stitched. So we're going to work along that edge, and we're going to start at the end here. So we're going to work our first stitch of our crochet. We're going to, don't forget, you're going to do your loop just like we did from the beginning. pull your hook in. And so we're going to start right here at this space, the corner of this square, these two squares. So here we go. We're going to start here. We're going to put our hook into the corner of the pink and the corner of the gray. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull it through those two corners. So we have our two stitches on the hook. We're going to yarn over our hook and we're going to pull through those two stitches. And so now we have connected those two. You'll see where those two are connected at the very beginning of this row. And we're going to essentially just do the same thing we've been doing along this way as well. So we're going to go into the pink and we're going to go into the gray. We're going to yarn over our hook and we're going to pull it through those two stitches. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull it through the two on our hook. And we're just going to keep going and we're going to keep doing that the same way we did the last ones. Yarn over and pull up your loop. Go into the pink, go into the gray, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through two. And now we're at the middle of our first cluster right here. This is the middle of our first cluster, that space that we have there. So we're going to go through the pink and we're going to go through the gray and we're going to yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through both of those loops. Now, you'll probably have to go back and watch this video a few times to see this. You'll also, like I said in the other video, you know, you always like to go watch videos by multiple people on what they're doing to connect their granny squares, because someone may be doing something that looks a little bit easier. They might be using a different technique. They may be using a different angle. It just all depends on what works for you. But I highly recommend just going and finding other videos and watching the different videos on how different people are doing it, because it helps to see what other people are doing as well. So here we are. We're going into the pink. We're going into the gray. We're yarning over our hook and pulling it through those stitches. Yarning over and pulling through two. Going into the pink and the gray. Yarning over and pulling up a loop. Yarn over and pull through two. And we're just going to keep going down the line. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit, because if you need to, you can always go back and re-watch the very beginning of this to see how this was done. I just want to get to this middle piece for you so you can kind of see how we're going to connect, since we've already connected one direction, how we connect the next direction. So we're going through our hooks, or our stitches, and we're pulling up our loops. Here we go. This is our last cluster on this set, or this square set of squares. Going through the pink and the gray, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through two. So now here we are. Now let me show you this. So we have arrived here, which is, this is where we connected the first set, right? So this right here is the corner of this space of these two stitches. And this is the corner of the next two that we're going to connect. But you'll see these are already connected. So it's going to be a lot easier when we're doing this. So what we're going to do for this is we are going to stick our hook into these two, the pink and then the gray that's underneath, just like we would any other corner. So you're going to just put your hook all the way through, yarn over and pull up your loop, yarn over and pull through two. That connects your last corner on this side of your square, and we're going to just keep going. There's going to be there's not really a transition needed. What you're going to do is you're going to take your hook, you're going to put it into the next set of corner stitches, the gray, and then you're going to go through to the pink. You're going to yarn over and pull your loop through both, just like you have been. Yarn over and pull through both of those loops that are on the hook. And now you've arrived at your next set. You've just worked over this hump very simply. Did you see how we just connected this set of corner stitches, and then we just connected this set of corner? These you'll just run the remaining edge of this next square to connect the rest of this side. So you're going to go through the gray and you're going to go through the pink, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And you're just going to keep going down this edge. Oops, I caught too many. Here we go. Keep going. And we've got to go, here we are in the middle of a cluster, so we're going into a space. Pull those up. We've got our next cluster. We're going to go into the gray, into the pink, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to go into the gray and the pink, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And now we're going through our space again. I am just going to keep on going to the very end. And now like I mentioned before, you're going to want to do this a few times. You're going to want to pull this out. This is going to take a little bit of practice. This is not something that, I don't want you to get frustrated on things like this and just quit. Just keep trying. It's going to take time for you to figure this out. This isn't, I had a hard time when I first started connecting squares because I kept connecting one side one way and another side another way, and I lay them out flat and realized I twisted or turned something the wrong way, and it can get frustrating, but I do not want you to be frustrated. This is, the more you practice, the better the easier it'll be. You might learn a new technique or something that helps you better connect than other ways. Like I mentioned, there's also many different ways to connect squares, so you might want to look up other videos on YouTube that will show you different ways to connect. There might be an easier way for you, so just check that out. Just see what works for you. And so now we have arrived at the end of this row. We are at our last stitch, our last corner stitches, and so we're going to take our hook and we're going to insert it into both of the corners. We're going to yarn over our hook, our loop, and our yarn over, and we're going to pull up a loop. Now we've got our 2 stitches. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through both of those loops, and now we have connected this whole side, and this is already connected, and so now all 4 squares are connected. So in order to end, just like we did before, we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull up a loop again. We're going to pull an extra so we have area, or we have enough that we will be able to weave in later. Take our scissors, cut off that piece, and pull off the space that is coming from the yarn, the roll of yarn, and then just tug that tightly so that it creates that knot on there that won't come out. And so now if you lay this out flat, you'll see that you've connected these squares both ways. So you've got your little mini legacy blanket here. And so that is how you connect your squares. I encourage you, really, go back and watch this video. Check out how to connect these. If you have any questions, make sure you comment below. Let me know if there's something else that you need to see. We can always play around with stuff with these videos too. I want these videos truly to be a way for you to be able to create a legacy square, connect legacy squares, and then in the next video I'm going to show you how to do a border on a legacy square. And so in the end, you'd be able to gather a group of women together to make squares, to connect squares, and to put a border on your blanket so you can give a blanket away in your local community to a child in need. That's the goal of this. And so this isn't a race. This isn't something that has to be done perfect. This is just something fun that we get to do together, and I truly hope that these videos are helping you learn a little bit more about how to make the squares and how to connect the squares so far. So don't forget, if you have questions, leave them in the comment section below and I will answer them, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and talk to you soon. Bye.